Well, hello everyone and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself, Anne Welsh. Today we're talking about embracing yourself as a woman, Pain. There's so many challenges that comes as being a woman, depends on what culture and what part of the world you live in. But this pain and challenges comes because we women sometimes have that self-doubt, we're not good enough. Then how do you grow away and find that belief that you are actually better than what society, what the mold has all decided that you are? How do you find your own joy? How do you overcome those pain and find your joy? My guest, Seline Shenoy, will just be telling us how she's done this. She's a blogger, podcast host, and a journalist on topics related to psychology and personal growth, wellness, social and global issues. She is the founder of the Dreamcatcher, a blog and podcast community that connects and encourages people to live their dream life and make a difference in their world. She's also the author of The Beauty Redefined, How to Feel Authentically Beautiful in Today's World. We'll be asking her about her, who is Celine and how did she find it in herself to overcome challenges of the world, especially through her book, and find her own joy. Meet my amazing guest, Celine, as we share her story and also find words of encouragement on how to find your inner self, no matter what challenges you're going through. Meet Celine. Well, hello everyone and welcome again to Painless Universal, conversation with myself, Anne Welsh. Today's conversation is really focused about embracing and finding yourself. How do you really truly find yourself as a woman, being born in a culture where women have a value, but still we still need to speak up and find our true self. My guest, Celine, will be talking about all of this from her own experience and how she's also utilizing her own platform to do this. Celine, how are you today?
Hello, Anne. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm very well today. I'm excited. The weather is lovely here in England, so I can't complain. Where are you joining me from, by the way?
I am currently living in Dubai, and I can say the same thing as you just did. The weather is awful. It's extremely hot. It's in the hundreds, and it's very humid, so hot and sticky.
Oh, wow. Well, yesterday was raining a lot here, so we were at that point where we're thinking, I said to myself, I just want it to be so hot. And I think, sometimes you want things and you're not quite sure what you truly want. So I sympathize with you because when it was raining so much, I just felt that way. I just thought, because I can't say the weather's good, anything positive about it. But, your journey.
I love the weather in the United Kingdom. I like the cold. I like overcast skies, my kind of weather.
All right, then I think you should pay a visit here sometime. Come see us here. Your journey is truly amazing, and you're very open about your culture differences between the men and the women and how that has influenced your life. But before we get into all of that, can you tell us a little bit about who is Seline Shenoy?
Well, I am a blogger, a writer. I'm a podcast host. And I'm also an author. I wrote a book called Beauty Redefined, How to Feel Authentically Beautiful in Today's World. And that was published in 2018. I'm also a marketing and branding professional. That's something I do in a freelance capacity. So that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, that's wonderful. The blogging. How did you get into that? Because when people think of blogging, everyone thinks it's something they could easily jump on and get it and do it and it just work. But not realizing blogging is actually quite a business because you have to be authentic and you have to be consistent. You have to focus. How did you get into that side of things?
Yeah, well, and that's an interesting question. So I started out as a life coach. I was a life coach at a holistic institute, and I was doing one-to-one sessions, and I was doing group sessions, and I was sending out weekly newsletters to my clients. And I started getting compliments on the newsletters. They're like, "Hey, you are a really great writer," and one of them suggested starting a blog. And I knew nothing about blogging at that point. And that's when the seed got planted and I started doing a little bit of some research, finding out what it's about. And that's how it that's how it got started. And then I just went for it, and it's something that came very naturally to me. And that's when you know you're onto something, when it feels easy and when you feel a sense of satisfaction doing it. So then I just kept going.
No, I agree on that one, because sometimes you do things and you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And you just don't feel the urge. But when you truly love what you're doing, it could be in the middle of the night and someone could wake you up. I give example, my son, he plays ice hockey.
Yeah.
I could get him to do chores in the house. This is not something he's really keen on, although I'm trying to get him to master it. But when I say we have to play ice hockey, tomorrow's the game, he would get up. He would be the first to wake everyone up in the house and say,
Really?
I don't want to be late, guys. I have to be there on time. So it just shows that when you truly love something, and it doesn't even seem like you're doing anything. It just seems like you just want it to keep going and you want to enjoy that process. So I totally enjoy, I understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, and it's not very easy to find that. There's some people who are fortunate enough to find what gets them excited, what they're passionate about early on in their childhood when they're younger. And I always used to envy those people. I said, why can't I find something that juices me up and that feels easy for me to do, relatively easy.
Yes.
So that didn't happen until my mid 20s.
Well, don't worry, that makes us too. That didn't happen for me. I don't think I even knew exactly what I was going to do until about my mid-20s as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think it's...
I mean, it takes time, right? You got to get to know yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And that takes time. I think the age of 17 or 18, it's too young to figure out what you want to do in life. When you have to declare your major or what you want to study, I think it's too early, Anne. I mean, I enrolled as a finance major, and I'm like, God, what was I thinking? I mean, I am not good with
you and I went into the banking sector, and I thought to myself, what am I doing here? This is not truly me. It's not my everyday. And that's why I applaud anyone. Once you find that thing that truly works for you, go for it and stick to it, because it is the only thing that's going to make your heart sing and dance every morning when you get up and you realize you have to get back to doing what you love.
Right.
Going to Celine, about your life. There's something fascinating about you. You said, growing up, you had to learn to embrace freedom as a woman. And it's something, when we live in today's generation, people don't realize in today's world, people are still just learning that process, what it means to live as a woman. There's still those challenges around being a woman. What were some of those challenges that you had to endure?
Well, for me, I grew up in the Indian culture, and I would say I was lucky because my parents are more liberal than most parents in the Indian culture. So they placed a lot of emphasis on education, on travel. We traveled all around the world, and that's what made me so open-minded. The fact that I embrace every culture, every race, it comes from all those early traveling experiences. But I remember my first major challenge when it came to trying to find a sense of freedom as a woman was when I had to convince my father to let me go to the United States for an education. That was not easy. He was concerned that I would kind of take in some of the values, which he didn't think were very good ones. He wanted me to remain like the good girl. And it took a lot of convincing for him to finally let me go. And I'm so glad I did that, because it completely changed me as a person. But yeah, and then as I grew up, it became increasingly apparent to me that I was different from everyone in my community, especially in the socioeconomic strata that I grew up in, because I just wanted different things. I lived my life differently. I had completely different value system from everyone else, and they didn't really get me. So I've always felt like a misfit. I always felt like I'm like the outsider, and I still do. But fortunately now I'm more accepting of myself. In your 20s, you're insecure, you're trying to fit in. And if you know, you can be vulnerable to other people's criticisms, they can, you know, I was made to feel like there was something wrong with me, that I was defective.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with you? Why are you reading a book instead of going out partying with us? You know, things like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in college, I was the kid who was sitting at Barnes and Nobles reading on Saturday night what the other people are like partying. And, you know, so it was always a sense of, okay, I know I'm different. And how am I going to carve a place for myself in the world while also having a sense of community? Because, you know, we human beings, we're social beings. We need to have friends. We need to have people who accept us for who we are. So it took me a while to find my tribe, and learn to accept myself, have the freedom to be who I am, be okay with being who I am. That was a journey for me. That took a while for me to get to that place of acceptance. And what helped me was, you know, reading personal development books, getting therapy, going to, you know, getting life coaching. All of this really, really helps. And because I had to change my belief systems, you know, because somehow you absorb it from culture, from the media, that somehow fitting in is what you should be doing. Don't rock the boat, and, you know, kind of fall into the line of what, you know, fit into the mold somehow, fit into that mold, and you'll be okay. But no matter how much I tried to fit into the mold, it was so hard for me. So I stopped lying to myself, and I started saying, you know what, I got to find another way of living, and I got to change my beliefs about myself and the kind of person that I am. So that for me was a way of liberating myself. And I'm sure that a lot of women feel that way, because, you know, we're raised to believe that we have to be a certain way, live in a certain way. You know, you have to follow the rites of passage, you know, go to college, maybe get married, have kids.
Yes.
You know, I mean, so that traditional path is kind of forced on a lot of women, especially in cultures like mine. So, you know, I would say to women out there, just be okay with being yourself. If you want to be an independent career woman, that's fine. If you want to be a mom, stay-at-home mom, that's fine too.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that, because I think what you're saying is very true. Some women still feel. I remember when I was still quite young. I was just 18, and the guy said, "Oh, now you're about to go into university. You've ticked one box because you've been accepted into university. But remember, you still got 5 other things to accomplish." And I think to myself, what do you mean I have 5 other things? Oh, you need to get married, you need to have kids, you need to do all that. Like, oh gosh, I just got into university. Let me just deal with one thing first before we go into the second. So it's always, I think with women, they always have this expectation of what a woman should be. And now the society already has this definition. Oh, you need to have, when you have kids, you just don't have the one kid. You probably should have 3. Like, okay. So I really understand when you said the fitting into the mold thing, because it's something society expects of us.
Right. And I'm just glad that the whole definition of femininity is evolving, it's changing, and society's increasingly becoming more accepting of women choosing to live in, you know, non-traditional ways. You know, that's good. That's progress.
It's big progress. And you always say you didn't see much of inspiration growing up. So you started creating those inspiration within yourself. What kind of inspiration were you looking for, and how did you start filling that gap?
Yeah, well, Anne, I was inspired by a lot of things. You know, my parents, their hard work, they were bank managers in the early phase of their career, and looking at them work so hard and do whatever it takes to put food on the table and give us a good life was something that stayed with me, you know. But, you know, you'd be surprised, in my younger years, the first thing that inspired me were Disney characters, these strong female characters in movies like Beauty and the Beast, Belle, Pocahontas, Mulan, because to me, they represented these strong female archetypes who were independent, who were, who were okay with standing up against the bullies, fighting for their rights. I don't know how familiar you are with these storylines, but
yeah, I love this thing. They inspired me as
right.
well. And even today, you hear some people say negative things, and I'm like, no, I got inspired by this thing.
Maybe like Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella was more of the old-fashioned kind of take on what women should be like. But then come the 90s, that started changing, right?
Yes.
They started putting these stronger female characters on screen. And for my young mind, that made an impression, right? It stayed with me. Mm-hmm. And then as I grew older, then I got into personal development, spirituality. I started going to workshops, and I just always had an interest in that. And I have to say, and I'm also truly inspired by anyone who's masters of their craft, like creative people, singers, performers. I just take great delight in the arts. To see someone who can really be a master of their craft, because there's so much that goes into doing something really, really well, that craftsmanship, the diligence, the attention to details. I love people who pay attention to the details. Like there's something so wonderful about that, so watching artists was also a huge inspiration for me, because they taught me that anything is possible if you're willing to put in the work and really let your imagination run wild, because really it has no limits.
Yeah, because it's truly them that you could really see your work put in action. For example, you see a sportsman who is trained all these years, and all of a sudden get into the Olympics, you really applaud that effort, and you really see that in put in practice. And it's something
it takes diligence to have that level of expertise and that depth of knowledge, that skill set to be really, really good at something. Mm-hmm. I admire because it takes a certain level of it takes a certain kind of person to reach that level of mastery. Absolutely. So I greatly respect people who are able to do that in any field, but even if it's like making teddy bears, I don't care.
Absolutely. Whatever it is, I applaud you and say, if you could take that time to learn that skills, I applaud you. You make a valuable quote. I think this is I saw this in your my team saw it on your website. What I lack in self-belief, I made up for in my determination. How did you achieve this? Because a lot of people lack self-belief. A lot of people every day they wake up, they're thinking, I can't do this, I can't go to the gym, I can't do this. But you said you made that up with your determination. How did you do that?
Well, that phrase, fake it till you make it.
Absolutely. Yes. Go ahead, that phrase. Yes.
That's what did the trick for me. There was a phase in my life when I had very low self-esteem. I did not believe in myself, but I think I was born with this grit, this sense of this determination, this perseverance, like this. I was able to just get started on something and let that carry me to a tipping point where I started seeing results. For example, just to make this, bring this home, like, when I was losing weight in the beginning, I could not run for more than 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, I'm so unfit. But I just kept going and going. Like from 5 minutes, I went to 10 minutes, and then 10 minutes to 15 to 20. I just kept moving. And I think that really comes from, all the personal development stuff that I did. I read a lot of books. I think personal development and developing the right habits and rituals were cornerstones for me. Like if just combine those two, and I could do it. And it wasn't always easy, because I had naysayers, I had critics who said you can't do it. But in the beginning, it's always hard, because you need it's kind of like a plane taking off. Like for the plane to take off the runway, the plane needs a lot of fuel. It needs a lot of momentum to get off the ground. Similarly, when we're starting to do anything, it really requires that inner strength. But once you get to a point like that tipping point, that threshold, where you start seeing results, it becomes a lot easier, because that starts motivating you. You get more inspired when you see the returns on your investment. So that's how it worked for me. I mean, it's not magic. I just kept going. And I had that faith that things were going to work out somehow for me. And I realize not everyone can do it. And if your listeners are having a tough time doing that, get support, get a coach, get a counselor or a friend, get a friend, who you trust, because initially you probably would need that support.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Starting doing this, finding that determination to keep going is never easy. And another thing I like about you is that you talk about restart Spain. Restarting things from the beginning, when things, you've been at this level, and all of a sudden things started crumbling. You went back to the bottom level, and you found it in you to go through that pain and start again. How did you do that? How did you find it when people are, and this is for anyone listening as well, anyone who's rock bottom, how would you advise them that you can do it? And what method did you ask them to apply?
Well, for me, first of all, let me explain what my rock bottom was. I had a very difficult breakup with somebody I was involved with for a long time. And I was not in a good place in my career. My career was not bringing me any joy. I knew I was not doing the right thing. I was in a very dark phase, but the first thing I had to do is really deal with my emotions. So I got therapy. I found a way to kind of process what I was feeling. And then I had to deal with my belief systems. I had to change the way I viewed myself, because I totally lost myself in those few years, and I had to kind of recapture the essence of who I am. So that took a lot of reflection. That took a lot of inner work. I remember what really kickstarted it was when I went to a retreat. Tony Robbins, have you heard of him?
Yes, I have. Yes.
So I went for his retreat in Bali in Indonesia. That was like an 8-day retreat. And that really kicked it off, because, there's something about going to a different place, right? And you're kind of in that environment, you're soaking in all the motivation, you're soaking in all the positive vibes. And I met some incredible people during that event who were doing such amazing things in their life. So it really took me out of those dark clouds that I was surrounded by. So I really encourage people, like, go to a different place. You don't have to do an eat, pray, love journey like Elizabeth Gilbert did. But just go somewhere where, you can kind of get renewed, be exposed to a different place and different people. But that kick-started it, but then I continued, I built on that by doing all the personal development. And I really believe in the mind-body connection. So I was really, really relentless when it came to staying healthy, doing all the basics right, getting enough exercise, getting enough sleep, eating healthy food, because when you do that, your body releases a lot of feel-good hormones, right? Because all that sadness and depression, depression, but that's a different ballgame altogether. But like really, when you're really low, it's because you're not feeling good in your body. You're in a very constricted state. And when you exercise and you eat healthy foods, it opens you up. It elevates your vibration. I truly believe in it, and it's worked wonders for me. So that helped. So it was really holistic. It was mind, body, spirit. I started doing meditation. I started cleaning up my aura. Really needed to do everything. I needed to
clean up your environment as well. Like, did you think, okay, as much as I'm cleaning up myself, the thing I always think about when I do things like this is I also have to clean up my environment. I have to clean up my own personal space, the people I'm talking to, and making sure we're having the right dialogue. I don't know, did you have to do that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I was first on my own for a while because I really, really needed that time to heal. And then I started getting a new set of friends. I started going out and going to certain meetup groups, doing more networking, and I met some great people. And yeah, I mean, it is possible. It is in the beginning, it's really hard because mostly because you feel so heavy with the feelings, with the emotions, and you have to find a way to process it in a healthy way.
Yes.
You have to, otherwise you're going to go downhill. That's where
Yes.
that's a slippery slope, because you can, when you're so low, you can just wallow in it and you can get into this victim mentality, and you don't want to do that. You do not want to do that. You need to find a way to pick yourself up, um, and yeah, deal with those feelings, especially if you're an empath or somebody who feels things very deeply. um, you're even more vulnerable. So yeah.
No, absolutely. I love what you just said, because I think sometimes we lose ourselves in the process of trying to heal. And if
Yeah,
you don't know how to find your own self, you find yourself in the deepest, it's almost like, you're a tap of floating water. You're floating much, much deeper. But once you learn to let go, you find yourself start rather than sinking, you start floating back on top. And it's really a magical thing to do. And I always do it
absolutely.
when, especially I do mine whenever I have my chronic illness, and I'm in the now that bit probably day 5, and I'm still here, and the doctor comes by saying you're still going to be here for another week. You're like, okay, do I take this that I have to be here? Yes, I know my body needs healing. I know I'm not feeling better, and I need to be
Yeah,
here for various reasons. But at the same time, I also need to, my head seems like it's ready to go. My mind seems it's ready to go. Everything's just the pain is not ready to go. So I start healing the body and start sending signals and saying, look, what is it that I need to do to you to help you get recover fit? What is it I
correct.
need to do to you to stop
Yeah,
this pain you're giving me? So I don't have to be on this drug dependency. I can now take off the drug. I can tell the nurse, let's
yeah,
try taking off the drug for a bit. So I feel when you said that when you're in that deep path, it takes you as a person. You need to find you, and you need to be ready within yourself. You can't even get anyone involved. It's really this is between you, yourself, and I, no one else. So I'm
correct.
so glad you went through that phase. And
Yeah, and having that awareness that you're in it is
yeah,
super essential,
yeah,
and that's where all the personal development work that I did, reading the books, going to the workshops, that that's what helped me. Like,
yeah.
I don't think I could have done it without that. Like, I seriously, it just completely, it changes your mindset, and it makes you more conscious and aware of what you're feeling when you go through these difficult patches in your life.
Absolutely. So Celine, you're on that journey of creating the Dreamcatcher, which is your blog, podcast, and also your book, which I think you just said you released that in 2018.
That's correct.
How has your life changed since doing all of this, having a proper platform to put them on, put your thought process, your learning into words, into things that people could actually utilize? How has your life changed since then?
Oh, and it changed tremendously. It's been such a beautiful journey. In the beginning, when I started, it helped me heal. Like, I could find it gave me a, a way to kind of express all the feelings that I had bottled up. But of course, I did it in a way that I wrote it in a way that would help people, because you're not writing in a diary when you're blogging. You kind of have to craft it in a way that would make it more reader friendly and that people would resonate with. So that's something that I learned over the years. But then as the years passed, I started hearing from people and saying, oh my God, this blog really spoke to me, or that line that you said really got me thinking about something that I'm going through. That's when I knew that this is something a lot bigger. This is a lot bigger than I could have imagined. And that's when I realized that this was something that I really needed to continue doing, because it gave me a sense of purpose. It gave meaning to my life. And it fulfilled me in a way that nothing can ever, like, even getting fancy things, like, you cannot compare the joy that you feel when you get an email from somebody from some corner of the world saying that that blog post you did last week, it saved me. Like, I've got emails like that, and you can't compare that feeling to, say, getting a new bag or a new outfit. You just cannot. That kinship that you feel with a fellow human being when you help them through something that you do and something that you love doing. It's not easy for me to write some of these, and because sometimes I reveal very personal details, and I feel a little bit like, oh, should I share this? Like, I get a little bit self-conscious, and but I'm like,
Keep sharing. It's really helping people. Honestly, I read
then I
a
think,
few of
okay, you
them.
know what? I know by sharing this, I'm gonna help others. So I'm just gonna, because I am concerned about, my image, and I'm like, oh, how's this gonna make me sound, gonna sound like a sap, But I mean, that's especially with the blog post on relationships,
Yeah.
it's
So
shared,
this is why this whole thing is called living with whatever pain or whatever issues you've been through. But most importantly, I tell people, you never watch this and at the end of it, you only see pain. What you see is how the person found their joy. So yeah, you do talk about your relationship issue, but the thing is that you talk about the positive side of it. And anyone who's going through that downtown is to let them know that, you know what, you can find your own joy. It will be difficult because you might need to do some soul searching wherever it might be, however you want to do your soul searching, but you will find it. So I think the more you are open and honest, you're saving a young girl out there who's obviously every girl is going to go through that heartbreak one way or the other, because it's just part of human life. You're not going to fall in love, or it's only rare that the first person you meet is the first person you're going to fall in love with. There might be a breakup there, so it's dealing with that.
Yeah, and life is full of peaks and valleys, and you got to share the peaks and the valleys. It's just, otherwise you're going to sound like a Pollyanna. You're going to sound fake, and people can smell that from a mile away.
And people forget that. People just say, oh, I'm just going to put only the good thing, or put the best image out there.
I'm not an Instagram model. I'm not going to be on the beach all day, with cocktails. I'm going to show you that I've been in the dirt, and I still am in the dirt sometimes, because that's what people connect with, especially in the work that I'm doing.
Exactly. And the real people as well, especially people who really want to find authentic happiness. Because one thing I like, which is something you said, is that we lose faith, and sometimes we let go of our dreams.
Yes.
And I don't know, sometimes I sit back and wonder, why does this happen to people? Why do we lose faith and let go of our dreams? And how can we avoid things like this? How can we help ourselves? Because it might not be avoidable, but there might be ways we can help ourselves to stop losing faith and not let go of our dreams.
Well, the first thing you got to address is the beliefs, right? I mean, what stops people from believing in their dreams and losing that faith is fear that they're not going to get what they want, fear that they're not good enough, fear of success too. Like, if I do succeed, how am I going to handle it? So I think addressing that, getting to the bottom of your fear is the key to getting back on track and finding that faith again. For me, I started losing faith when I felt like I was not going to get what I want eventually. Like, I was failing all the time, and I was seeing just no sign of getting close to my goal. And that would worry me, and that would make me lose faith, essentially. And I'm a pretty optimistic person, so it would take a lot for me to feel that way. So I mean, in those kind of situations, I mean, you have to find a way to get out of that passive victim mentality that I talked about. You really need to and figure out, okay, is this something that is actually going to work for me? You got to think about the odds. And you got to think about your strategy. You got to get strategic. You know, what can I do differently? Do I need to change the way I do things, the way I'm approaching this? And that's what helped me, you know, like I'm very strategy oriented. Even though I write a spiritually oriented blog, I really believe in the power of planning, of strategizing and finding a better way of doing things. So yeah, I mean, you know, even if you don't get what you want, I always say that if something is meant for you, it will happen. And it happens, you know, that stop banging on a door that's just not opening, because that ruins your self-esteem. And that's the dark side of being a determined person. Sometimes you knock on this door way longer than you need to. I mean, you need to know when to quit, and cut your losses. But I never see that as a failure, Anne. I see that as, you know, kind of understanding what the universe is trying to tell you, that this door is not meant for you, that there's something else for you. And to be able to understand that and change courses is very important. Like if you're in a really bad relationship and you're like trying to like think, you're trying to make it work, but you really can't. I mean, especially in those kind of situations, because you can't change the other person. If you've done everything you can and it's just not working out, then you got to have an exit strategy. You have to have an exit strategy and be willing to take a different path. So so yeah, I mean, I'm all for having childlike faith. I really believe that you should go for it. You should keep trying and trying till you're absolutely convinced that you've done the best you could.
Yes.
You know, and let larger forces take over after that.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So
I
so,
agree. No, you know, because you your post is very much, you share your painful experiences,
yeah.
right? And anyone reading it, for example, I read some of your posts and I was very glad you did it, because you talk about your deep side and then you talk about how you got out of that. In sharing your painful experiences, have you ever felt that you have helped other people to find their joy from sharing your experience? Do you think you've helped everyone along the way from sharing painful experiences?
All the time. As I told you, I hear from people, they comment on the blog, they email me, and that's what encourages me to continue sharing what I feel. But a lot of what I write is also, you know, it comes from research. I do a lot of research. I refer to the books that I've read, the podcasts that I listen to. All of that comes into play when I'm writing these blogs. But once in a while, I will add a personal anecdote. And not just mine. I even talk about my friends. I mean, of course, I don't use their real names. Talk about people that I know, and my ex coaching clients. And so, because that's what really humanizes your content. You know, you really need to humanize what you put out there so that people feel like you're talking about human beings at the end of the day. These are not just lofty ideals and concepts. You don't want to be too scientific when you're talking about such, you know, emotional and sensitive issues. So the best way to do that is through story and anecdotes.
And what next for the Dreamcatcher? I mean, it's doing very well. You've been doing this for almost a couple of years now. What next for Celine? Where should we look out for you?
Well, I have a lot of plans, and I'm just gonna take everything to the next level. I'm gonna start writing my next book next year.
Oh wow.
Yes. I have a lot of aspirations for my podcast, a lot of things that I want to do with it to take it to the next level. With the blogs, the same thing. Like I keep interacting with my subscribers, asking them what do they want to see. Do they want to see me to focus on certain topics? Do they want me to start writing less about some of the things that I cover right now, and just making it a stronger and bigger platform?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Celine, for joining me on my conversation today, Painless Universal.
Thank you.
I really think you inspired so many people, especially with your life path and the way you talk openly about subjects that mean so much to so many people. And you'll be surprised how much, you know, what we just had this conversation about, you know, means the world to so many who can't really, you know, talk openly about it. But you have been so honest and open to talk about it, and also to give people solution on how to find their joy. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you do, Anne. You're doing some incredible work yourself.
I don't think anything as great as you are. I love your work. Thank you.